morning, everyone. Glad to be here. I see many have problems with waking up this morning, but that's okay. My name is Milos Stojanociv, and I am the CEO of Arton Capital, global, one of the leading firms in the world in the industry of citizenship and residency by investment. Today we have several interesting topics to discuss, and with me I have my colleagues from their respective countries, experience in the industry, and they will share their opinions and thoughts where our industry is going. The first subject that I would like to open this panel is we see nowadays that the real estate options are becoming more and more popular in our industry, which was not the case before. And a lot of our clients are preferring to invest in the real estate other than bonds and donations and all other instruments that have been around for a long, long time. So I will first allow my colleagues to introduce themselves and their companies, and then to share opinion about this recent shift in our industry.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. So my name is Mathew Hogan. I'm Senior Vice President of Project Development for CMB Regional Centers. CMB is one of the largest EB5 regional centers. So EB5 is the immigration by investment vehicle for the U.S. With EB5, you don't earn citizenship. You're able to earn permanent residency through an investment into a new business that creates 10 new American jobs. It's a little bit different than a lot of the other programs. It's less focused on direct investment into real estate. It's more structured towards pooling capital to build construction projects or real estate projects in the U.S. As an alternative to our EB5 platform, we also have a sister company called NHK Capital Partners. It is a traditional equity investment platform for real estate investment into the U.S. So,
good morning, everyone. My name is Alexander Bello. I'm the managing partner of EC Holdings Group. We are an international investment advisory firm specializing in citizenship by investment and residency planning. We have a physical presence in 10 countries around the world. And as Milos was saying, I mean, just a quick introduction, or you would like already? So we do advise about all the major programs around the world. So we are, let's say, country agnostic, makes sense? So very, very keen to be today here and to be sharing our thoughts about the latest shifts and trends in the industry. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Hart. I'm the managing director and founder of Midland, Spain, which is a company specialized in selling new build properties in Costa Blanca, and Costa Cálida and Costa del Sol, the three most popular destinations in Spain in terms of properties. About the visas or the options that Spain is offering, I really think the citizenship by investment is one of the most interesting ones, because we have what we call the golden visa, and there are other ways of obtaining this visa. But investing in property is always a good option, because if you compare now properties with other investment alternatives like the stock markets or the public debt or wherever you can think, bank deposits, I mean, the profitability is much higher in real estate. And the forecast we have, at least for Spain, is that the property prices will be very stable. And also the rental potential is large, because Spain is the second tourist destination in the world. So I think it's always the profitability of the rental and the capital appreciation makes this a great investment. Thank you.
My name is Cordona. I am Maltese. I have been introduced to this sector quite recently. My previous experience was in politics. I was Minister for the Economy of Malta for nearly the last 10 years before 2020. When I was introduced to IWS Global, I was a little bit skeptic to enter into this sector. But slowly, I grew to appreciate the needs of having regularized international systems of relocation, of citizenship, of legal migration, of residences. And this reflects, I think, the need of economic development in different continents. And this leads me to appreciate more the fact that the shift from certain incentives leading to investments in bonds, securities, etc., is now going to the real estate sector. Makes, I believe, much more sense than before and gives this sector more confidence in terms of what previous speakers have mentioned. The fact that there is more stability, less fluctuation, and so any person who is interested in many of the programs that are offered can have more peace of mind and has the ability to plan more his economic performance. In our case, we have, as IWS Global, a number of programs that we work in. Mainly, our head offices are in Malta, but we also have presence in UAE now, in India, in Libya. Recently, we opened offices also in Skopje and Macedonia. And we do a number of citizenship programs. And we also focus a lot on what is called the Malta Permanent Residence Program, which is very advantageous, particularly for, of course, people who are coming from non-EU countries.
Thank you, gentlemen. Well, my first question will be to my dear colleague, Alexandre. You've been in this industry for a long time, and you've seen it from, I would say, the first beginning of a popularity. You worked on different programs in different jurisdictions and with the clients from all over the world. Now you see this shift from bonds and donations to real estate, and kind of you're the front, what you do is like the first contact with the client, trying to understand why the client is shifting from one traditional option to another. What do you think? Why is that?
Thank you, Milos. Let me share with the audience to answer your question, which is quite interesting, because the industry, we can say, has become quite mature. It's been around, you can say, also since several decades, but most probably in the last 10 years, this industry has really matured and is interesting to see the market, let's say, reach in terms of value. Based on the recent, let's say, estimates, they say that this industry currently is worth around 25-30 billion USD equivalent in terms of impact or investment. And over the next decade, by 2030, it could reach even more than 100 billion. So why this? Because I have a background. I used to come, I say in my previous life, I was in the military. So I used to be a fighter pilot. So now, as you know, in the military, people like acronyms. And a lot of the military acronyms have been shifted into the business world. One of the most, let's say, I think, perhaps renowned one is an acronym of 4 letters called VUCA, V-U-C-A, which stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. So to answer Milos' question in terms of, if I look at this industry in the last 10 years, if you think about this industry, in essence, is an insurance policy about what if, whether it's a political risk, an economical risk, a personal risk, makes sense? And hence, we live in very interesting times, makes sense, without taking any sort of political views. Naturally, we are all political agnostic, let's say, on this discussion. But we can say that this acronym that I shared with you is very much, I would say, spot on in terms of the times in which we live. Very volatile times, very uncertain, very complex, very ambiguous. We know what's happening in terms of the geopolitical shifts. Makes sense? And it seems that the world is going very much, into, someone says, multipolar world, there is even more of, how can I say, ambiguity in terms of where one would feel safer. Make sense? So one example could be like why a lot of high net worth investors or wealthy people are coming to the UAE. Make sense? Increasingly, especially in the last 2-3 years. whether it has been because the local establishment has been running well the COVID pandemic, or because it is a place where there's a lot of concentration of capital. But it's in essence because, I would say, my simple 2 cents is that because it's safe and secure, and it offers a platform on which people can fundamentally develop themselves, their industries and their businesses. So to come to an end and to answer your question is that, the more the world is getting complex and very much kind of a shifting sands type of environment, the more wealthy people, are looking fundamentally for options to hedge against those insecurities. And let's say a very robust solution we can say now, as the colleague was also saying, is that people have entered into a view to build a portfolio, whether it's of citizenships or residencies. And you can see that governments all around the world are increasingly keener to consider this type of structures, which are nothing else than an FDI, a foreign direct investment structure, to attract hard currency and investments from people that are either going to subscribe to bonds, donations, and so forth. And the point to conclude on what we're witnessing in the industry is that because real estate has always been one of perhaps the simplest and most straightforward things, people like to touch things generally, and then it all boils down to have an asset, and then it all boils down to markets that have potentially higher, let's call it, profitability, whether it's Spain or Malta or Greece or Portugal. I mean, we all know that there are certain countries that are already a strong pool for various reasons, whether they are strong economies or because they are touristic destination. So to come to an end, I think that what we're witnessing is that there is a higher diversification in terms of the investment solutions that these different programs / jurisdictions offer, but definitely real estate has become a very mature one. At the beginning it was like let's call it the developer, the random developer and so forth, but you can see, like in the US, it's very well established since many decades. So it's become very sophisticated, and there are so many different ways that people can subscribe to it. And I would say that, to conclude, it's perhaps a very straightforward way to, let's say, invest and park some money. Generally, investors get a yield and a return, and in the meantime, you can secure an alternative residency or citizenship in a relatively quick time. And then sometimes people do relocate with their families and so forth, so you have also a place where to go, or you just build a portfolio. So I hope...
Yeah, thank you. Well, people love real estate. We all know that. And it's always safe to invest into something that you can actually have on paper, have a key, open, close. Spain is becoming very popular. And there's a lot of destinations in Spain that people like to go. There's traditionally Barcelona, Madrid, but then Mallorca, Valencia, Ibiza, you name it. People go for Spain. They get quickly, relatively quickly, the residency. They invest in a country that is a European Union, part of European Union. It's very touristic. But what is your experience? Do these people actually want to relocate in Spain? Is it a trend that people actually are relocating? Because traditionally people did not relocate to the places where they applied for a residency or a passport. Or they just want to have a holiday home, or they're looking for ROI, looking at it just simply as an investment, but that they can use sometimes. So what's your opinion? What is a trigger point? What is a selling point of, say, Spain?
Yeah, well, in our company, we've shifted from a model in which we were selling only lifestyle, and that's been for decades in Spain. Well, the parties, the food, the culture, the everything, the climate, of course. But now it's becoming a more interesting investment. And it's because of the new laws that were put in force from 2013 that makes this a more interesting investment. Because now we have the Golden Visa, we have something called the Nomad Visa, which is specially designed for teleworkers and people that come to work in Spain. Business have changed completely. We have many people that can work from any part in the world. and still report to the head office, or maybe they are self-employed, they are programmers or web designers or many professions, and they can work in Spain, enjoy their lifestyle, be in a place where the climate is great, the people are welcoming, and still do their business. And in fact, they have even tax advantages compared with the Spanish nationals. So I think we, in our company, we never paid attention to the citizen by investment because we had the demand. There's 100,000 transactions for foreign people in Spain every year. So we didn't really need to push for these programs for citizenship or anything like that. But now I think it's becoming more interesting. When the initial law was approved, it was a minimum investment of 500,000 euros. And at the time, it wasn't that interesting. But now with the new property prices we are seeing all over the world, I mean, it's not really that expensive. And for us, it's a new market. And that's why we're coming to this exhibition, to start promoting this citizenship by investment, also apart from the lifestyle. So I think we have now a partnership with different lawyers that will help to get these programs. In fact, you can get these documents safely. So I think it's changed, and us as a company, we need to adapt and start promoting more this model.
Thank you. So Malta is the only one remaining European Union country that offers citizenship by investment and standing strong in front of European Union. We're proud of you, and we hope you manage to win this fight.
We will.
It's a program that was priced a little bit above others. It attracted a lot of applicants, but it was never a mass. And here we have an opportunity to hear from somebody who saw this program for both sides, being in the government and now being outside of the government with us in our industry. So how the government perceives this, like the real estate option? Do they see the benefit? Do they see the threat, what is happening in Portugal? Do you think it's a good approach going full real estate with no other options, or for the economy of the country, and or should the country offer different options, investment options? And why Malta is not promoting real estate more? Malta is beautiful. Malta has, I mean, it's an amazing island. It's like a group of islands, and I believe it should be done more.
Yes, Milos. First of all, I would like to thank you for welcoming me in your sector after so many years in politics. And I must be honest now that now I can be truly honest and absolutely honest in what I say. Malta is a very small country. So when you speak about real estate, you have to take into consideration the fact that the country is minute if you compare it to other jurisdictions. So the price of the property, the prices of the property, not for those who are interested to see the property as an FDI and to see the return on investment that they have, but for us, Maltese who live there, is very high. So that is the starting point. So when you say, listen, we shift as a sector our investment cap in any program whatsoever, any country, could be Caribbean, could be European, could be China, India, whatever, you have to take this into consideration, that in our case, investing in property is much harder, more expensive than investing in any other commodity, let's say, there could be. So this explains why in Malta, yes, of course, the property aspect has its own leverage. Secondly, I believe that, and I would like to remind or recall what happened in the 60s. In the 1960s, very few people present here were born. I wasn't born in the 60s, but there was a movement in the United Nations at the time, which was promoted by a Maltese ambassador. His name was Arvid Pardo. And the movement was towards having a declaration by the United Nations declaring and asserting that the seabed is the universal common heritage of mankind. So there was a declaration which confirmed that the seabed all over the world is part of the heritage of us all. It could be that you are Maltese, it could be you are from Emirati, it could be that you are Indian, French, Japanese, doesn't matter. It's part of our heritage, common heritage of mankind. And in a way, I see also that, in all honesty, global citizenship is our heritage as well. Who can deny me, as a Maltese citizen, to live in another country? Why should there be these barriers? It is true that there is what my friend said before, the ambiguity which is given rise by global shifts, but somebody who has the interest to relocate, to invest in another country should be given this right. It is a common heritage of us all global citizens, without discrimination. And this leads me to say that, in my opinion, these programs, and I'm saying this today as somebody who was involved in a company which promotes this sector, should be flexibility, certainty, and comfort. So a person who wants to relocate to another country needs to have these options on the table. Now, if this guy, this family, this lady, anybody wants to have another jurisdiction, a second passport, a third passport, I believe that in the boxes that we have to tick from top to bottom, flexibility, comfort have to be in the high boxes. The jurisdiction has to make these people who are going to invest. Could be that the FDI takes the form of some investment in the manufacturing industry. I remember, for example, when I was a minister, and I was meeting with quite a number of people who were interested in investment programs in Malta to obtain citizenship, a Maltese passport. I was asking them, listen, but why Malta? Why are you choosing this small country? What is your interest? And most of them would tell me, listen, we are interested because I am following what is happening in high tech, in manufacturing, in the touristic sector, in Spain, it could be in Malta, it could be in Portugal, it could be anywhere else. And I would like to involve myself, not only from a return on investment perspective, but to contribute to my option of flexibility and comfort. And I think that this is a very positive direction that the sector has taken. It is a positive direction in the sense that, unlike what certain people try to instigate, that this is all about money, that this is all about making a quick buck for the countries and for the companies involved. No, this is also about giving people a second chance, a third chance, a flexible chance, more flexibility, more autonomy in the way how they manage their finances, their family, their children, their spouses, their partners, their own companies. And this in itself helps for global citizenship and helps also to achieve more benefits for all the jurisdictions that participate in these programs.
Thank you. I agree with you. If we look at it from another perspective and take out the citizenship or residency by investment, and we look what the immigrants do when they come to, there's also all sorts of immigrants, but if you think that one of the best and most famous British singer, it's not actually British, it's North African. If we think that today a French national team, football team, which is won the previous one and came second on the last World Cup, well then there's not much French people in it, yeah?
Milos, can I just say one word about this. In harder times, when Malta was still a colony of the British Empire, there were a lot of financial restraints for the locals. Thousands of Maltese emigrated to New York, Canada, and Australia. Today, these immigrants, some of them were illegal immigrants, let's face it. Others were government-planned immigrants, because they couldn't sustain to the economy of the time, of the 60s. Today, these guys are the most successful Maltese in a global context. So they left the country penniless. Some of them came back, most of them didn't. But if you see their success rate in other continents, in Australia, in the US, in Canada, today, by far, financially, they are the most successful.
It's known to everyone. One of the biggest companies in the world and the richest man in the world living in America is not American. He's South African, Elon Musk. And then you have one of the most successful American companies, Google. It's not founded by American people. It's founded by immigrants and so on and so on. So we see how much the immigrants help the countries and develop the countries where they migrate, and this is what makes the world beautiful, just being diversified. The biggest example of that is the US, where I believe US and UAE are the two most diversified countries in the world. And I don't know exactly, but I think EB5, the program, US program, is probably the first one official ever existed. And by numbers, I don't have statistics, but I believe it's probably the one that attracted the most investors. Still standing strong, still very attractive. There are queues and delays because of the numbers of the applicants. What do you think? Is this going to continue? And also, we have only one single way of investing. Do you think that the US economy would benefit if they look at it more into diversifying, putting a real estate, maybe not the way the European countries do, but investment in a larger hotels, in bigger amounts or something? What do you think about it?
So when it comes to the EB5 program, and here I'll talk a little bit about kind of what's happened over the years with the program and where it is today. The EB5 program is absolutely the anomaly of these immigration by investment programs, in that it's really not focused on a traditional business investment that allows you then to achieve citizenship or permanent residency. It's actually a very low rate of return investment that's structured specifically to create U.S. jobs. And so when you talk about, the impact that the program can have, obviously it has a very significant, $40+ billion impact over the last 30 years with foreign investors coming into the United States specifically through the EB5 program. My company alone is about $3.5 billion worth of that investment. We've worked with well over 6,000 investors, and from a diversity standpoint, over 104 countries. So we cast a very wide net, work with a lot of investors from a lot of different places. And certainly the country could be significantly impacted by creating other channels for immigration by investment. Unfortunately, immigration in the United States is one of the most hot button issues. There hasn't been comprehensive immigration reform in the United States since 1990. And it's a topic that a lot of the U.S. lawmakers just don't want to touch for various reasons. Obviously, there's a lot of concern with what's going on at the southern border in the United States right now. So there's a lot of people saying, well, wait a minute, why would I go through a program like EB5 where I have to make an $800,000 U.S. investment into something that has a lot of risk associated to it, right? You have to create these jobs. You have to create an economic impact, while every day there's 8,000 or 9,000 people crossing the border illegally in the United States. And so, when you look at that program, when you look at the impact that it has on the United States, it's obviously been very beneficial in the real estate sector. It can be better. One of the things that would make it better, and it kind of goes along with what you mentioned, are the backlogs associated to the program. Right now, there's only 10,000 visas available to the program. Every investor, when they make an EB5 investment, is eligible to receive a green card for themselves and their spouse, and then any unmarried children under the age of 21. Typically speaking, there's about 3 people associated with every EB-5 investment. A spouse and a child typically is how that averages out. And so what that means is that one EB-5 investor is consuming 3 visas. So in reality, there's really only about 3,300 investors that can come in through the EB-5 visa program every year before those 10,000 visas are consumed. And it has created backlogs, in particularly investors born in China or mainland China or India or Vietnam. There is no backlog for investors from any other part of the world. And one thing that I think has really improved the program and is going to continue to impact the program is about a year ago, a little over a year ago, in March of 2022, there was a significant reform to the EB-5 program that created some new requirements for the U.S. government to adjudicate those petitions more quickly. They've also created set-aside visas, as they call them. So investors who invest into certain types of projects in certain regions within the United States can become eligible for a visa that allows them to kind of jump the existing backlog line. Obviously, that's very unfortunate. It's frustrating for investors who have been in the program already, but it's a huge draw for investors who are considering that program right now. I will tell you that in the past, it could be 2, 3, 4, 5+ years before an investor could actually receive their visa to enter the United States after first making their investment. The program's been reauthorized and investors have been able to file petitions now for a little over a year. We already have 3 projects that have been approved since we started filing them in August of last year. And so we are already seeing that process start to speed up with some of these new laws and requirements, and we're hoping that it's going to continue to trend in that direction. And what it's going to do is, again, it's not a traditional business investment where you're investing into something for a high rate of return. This is primarily focused on that EB-5 green card, on that permanent residency. But of course, if people see the benefit and they don't see the backlog, it's going to attract them to that. And once you're in the United States, obviously, you have the world's largest economy at your fingertips. You're there, you're in the US, your kids can go to school in the United States. When they graduate, they can work anywhere. They're not tied to a sponsorship by a company or anything like that. Creates significant freedom of mobility back and forth from your home country. You're not required to hold a US passport. You can continue to hold that green card, or you can go through the citizenship process to obtain that US passport. It creates a lot of optionality, and of course, it puts you in the US, giving you direct access to the US real estate investment market.
Thank you so much. So I want to touch another subject. All of us that we are in the industry, we understand that primary motive for anyone to participate to any of these programs is a mobility. It's a mobility and the opportunity to start a new life, to explore new opportunities. The ones that don't know about our industry much, they very often I hear this is for people that want to avoid paying taxes. We know that most of these programs have zero impact on paying or not paying taxes. Also, what we hear from the ones that are attacking our industry is that this industry attracts all sorts of kind of people with a different, not so great backgrounds. And we know that that is not true. The people that go through these programs are probably the cleanest and the most checked people that get that PR or a passport. These people and the money that they are invested have been checked by 3, 4, 5 agencies. They have to provide how they made every single penny that they're investing in these countries. Personally, I believe that these people deserve passport or a PR maybe more than majority of the citizens of the countries that they are applying for, because they will do more good and they will respect laws much better. But that's my personal opinion. What I want to clarify here, and I will start with Alessandro, because you have a variety of cases and everything. Do people really want to get a passport or residency so they don't have to pay taxes back home? Or taxes is not an issue?
Thanks, Milos, for the question. I think that we should make a step back. I would say that the short answer to your question is it's not a matter of avoiding paying taxes. I mean, if one wants to be a bit more sophisticated in the answer, it's about better planning for how much taxes you want to pay. And the reality is that, I mean, we have a, an esteemed colleague on the panel that used to be in a very prominent position politically in the finance ministry, and he knows even better than us that every jurisdiction effectively is fundamentally offering a platform in terms of, like, if you come to my country, or you will be exposed, to this different type of opportunities, and and there is, let's say, a cost of doing business attached to it. Makes sense? It could be as tax efficient as being tax free. I mean, like, we are benefiting being here in the UAE. Makes sense, at least nominally, if I can put it this way. Or, there are different types of tax regimes. So I think the short answer to it, this is not a matter of avoiding to pay taxes, because in one way or the other, we are all exposed to taxes, directly or indirectly. For example, here in the UAE, it is effective. There is no corporation tax. Makes sense, at least, they've introduced some degree of corporation tax recently for mainland companies, but, personal income tax is not there. So one of the key attractions of why we are here, I mean, if one wants to be, candid, is because, the tax, let's say, system is more friendly, shall we say it this way, makes sense, so that, people, I think that businessmen and everyone, appreciates that. I think that if one were to make, as I said, a step on the side, and it was interesting, my colleague talking about the EB5 and the number of visas available, let us not forget one thing. We need to put it in perspective. We are in a very high value industry. But if we look at the numbers, let's do macro. Let's give some numbers. How many people globally on a yearly basis are actually entering in this industry, whether it's America, Malta, Caribbean, and so forth? I mean, you're talking about, in the range of the latest estimates, it's probably what, 50,000 people? 50,000. Not 50 million or 500 million, 50,000. And 50,000 includes families. So it means that in terms of the real, let's call it investor, let's call it the main applicant or the lead investor, whatever you want to call it, makes sense? Every jurisdiction has a different way of labeling it. You see that if the average is about 3 people per application, divide 50,000 by 3, it means that you have what? 16,000 applications dispersed across, what is it? Less than 20 CBI, Citizenship by Investment programs, and 100 plus, let's call it golden visa or investor programs around the world. So why I'm mentioning this is that, and I fully support what Milos said, and I think my colleague was hinting to that as well when he was talking about the Maltese diaspora in the 60s. I think that, there are definitely, as always, if we take, let's say, where I'm going with this, Milos, because you made a question on tax, and, again, my colleague here could probably expand on that even in a more, let's say, sophisticated and detailed way. Tax is a very political sensitive topic. Makes sense? People can have a different view on it. The reality is that, these programs do offer the possibility to plan tax better, whether it's personally or business-wise. Makes sense? And the reality is that it is freely available, meaning that all these jurisdictions, because we are all facilitators, advisors, when you talk about, for example, profiles of people, I make it always very simple to clients, and I say, dear client, remember, I'm an advisor. I can tell you, based on your situation, you're like, what is the best program suited for your family and your requirements? But from who are you effectively, let's say, buying? You're buying or you're investing in a jurisdiction. So when it goes there to that level, the due diligence, enhanced due diligence, is of the highest level. Because who is giving you the citizenship, the golden visa, the residency, is a government authority. It's not me or a company. It's, it's a public, let's say, office that is granting you this, which actually gives a high degree of respectability, and, how can I say, compliance value to the program itself. So the tax element there, to conclude, I think it's very much there. I think, we shouldn't be hiding behind it, makes sense. investors and people are very tax sensitive, and the reality is that when you see that jurisdictions are going to shift the political agenda on this, I mean, we're reading it in the news, it seems that in the UK Labour will go back to government after 10 years, and you know, they're gonna, it's on their manifesto, they may touch inheritance tax, non-dom regimes and so forth, and you can see that in the UK, high net worth people in the last years, there's been a big shift, and a lot of them, as a matter of fact, are coming even here into the UAE. So why are they coming here? Just because they like the weather? Probably not, right? So I think that you know, the answer to your point is that if you see that at some point, I think I think there is a quote of a client, and they said, like, you know, everyone loves London, right? I'm sure that you know, it's difficult to find someone that doesn't love London, but you know, London is going to increase, let's say, you know, the tax bill on your overall, let's say, global wealth or local wealth and so forth. And I said, well, as much as I like London, makes sense. Perhaps London is not worth that, and so I may have to, you know, think about to relocate. So if you think about this type of, let's call it, you know, quotes, effectively tax is indeed a very, let's say, aspect to it, and I think the important thing is that when I said at the beginning that the industry has matured and evolved, I think it's not anymore just picking off the shelf, I want Malta, I want this, I want America, makes sense? You know, the compliance level, the complexities around it have significantly increased. Hence, you know, when clients come, for example, to our firm, makes sense, which is naturally specialized in this industry, the reality is that, you know, we have evolved into providing a service that is, I could say, I call it more holistic, because you do need to be an expert also into the tax implication, cross-border tax implications. How do you want to restructure, let's call it a certain type of businesses and setups, so that if you're going to the US, or you're going to Malta, or you're going to Spain, you're going to any other country, a client is well aware about what are the implications if you were to change citizenship and residency. And I think this is one of the aspects that I think it's quite interesting to see in the industry, how more sophisticated it has become, and how, let's say, a client requires a more holistic, let's call it, support in order to ensure that, you know, whatever program you add, and concluding on the tax thing, so that that aspect is actually taken into consideration in a comprehensive and compliant way, so that, you know, if one is looking to, let's say, have a, you know, more efficient overall tax regime, and you're coming to the UAE, and it seems that, you know, this is one of the key selling points, you are indeed sure that that is going to be the ultimate net result. Because, you know, on a very concluding note, for example, in the US, because I have actually recently quite a few inquiries, it's interesting to see how before the shift was, or the trend was, that people coming, let's call it, from the so-called southern part of the hemisphere, let's call it, you know, I call them tier 2 or tier 3 jurisdiction, with due respect, makes sense? We all know, let's say, you know, the type of countries, makes sense? And they used to go to the classic places, US, Canada, Australia, Europe. Now instead you are also seeing, and I go back to the numbers, it makes sense? We're not talking about the million trend of immigration, people that are kind of trying to leave Africa and come to Europe, but we're talking about the high net worth or ultra high net worth people. There's a lot of Americans in relative numbers, makes sense, that are actually renouncing their citizenship and trying, you know, and going somewhere else. And tax is one of those aspects, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, that's what's my second question. US. A lot of people coming out, a lot of more people coming in. The ones that don't want, would like to structure that tax plan better, are trying to get into some other programs, while we see more and more people coming to US. Once they get the green card, they'll have to pay taxes in US. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's historically been one of the drawbacks, right? Once you become a permanent resident in the US, you become subject to global taxation. And so it is something that you need to be prepared for, something you need to plan for. But historically, we've seen people understand that the benefits of that permanent residency, the benefits of that green card, outweigh the tax implications. In particularly if they're coming to the United States to access the US economy, to grow or expand a business, or to start a new business in the United States. And so the benefits, you know, to some people, maybe not. To some people, it's a dramatic impact on what their overall wealth is going to be, but it's something they have to plan for. It's something that's unfortunately unavoidable in the U.S.
Thank you. What about Malta?
To be honest, Milos, I don't see this from a local perspective. I see it more, as Alexander explained before, this is a comprehensive exercise that has to be done by anybody who is moving, who is flexible, who wants more autonomy. I mean, the huge difference in tax avoidance and tax evasion, we are seeing as well today certain movements in international finance and economy going towards harmonization of taxation, not only in continents. We are seeing the European Union pushing for harmonization of taxation. I personally do not agree with that. I agree that taxation should be a sovereign decision taken by individual states, and then anybody who will submit himself to the jurisdiction of that state will plan accordingly. We know the rates of taxes, we know the shift of taxes, we know the OECD and what is the OECD movement pushing towards. So these are things which I don't think that we should, as an industry, fall in the same trap, okay, that has fallen the banking industry. The banking industry today, particularly in, let's say, higher tiers economies, is a disaster. Why is that? Because banks have fallen into the traps laid by whoever has interest in the international scene to declare anybody with a bank account a money launderer, anybody with a bank account a criminal, a drug trafficker, an illegal trafficker. I mean, we cannot have this approach. We cannot be that. I mean, we need to teach. There is a responsibility on the industry to teach, to show that this is not about illicit financial movements, but, as my friends explained before, the percentage of people who are actually involved in this industry is so small and so well due diligenced by first due diligence, second due diligence, enhanced due diligence, operation due diligence, different companies, that this is the cleanest, probably one of the cleanest industries alive. I mean, whoever intends to do something bad in terms of his financial wealth, his money, his investments, should keep away from this industry, should go into the other direction, because it is very disciplined and very rigorous. And this is our responsibility, to pass on this message, not to fall in the same trap that the banking sector has fallen. It has become very difficult today to do international trade. Why? Because banks make cuts it makes us very difficult to operate, to pay from one jurisdiction to the other, to move money from one bank to another. I'm not saying that it is bad, but we need to have more educated policies, even in terms of different countries, and also to facilitate international trade. And of course, I mean, citizenship, relocations, I mean, these are required. They are a need in order to have more free trade. It is not enough that we see the European Union signing a free trade agreement with New Zealand if there aren't the mechanisms in place, the machinery in place, which enables a guy from New Zealand to live in the European Union. How is an investor going to benefit from a free trade agreement between two jurisdictions, between a union and another, if there isn't the facility, the mobility, the flexibility of movement? So we need to be positive, but we have to avoid falling in these generic traps that would do a lot of damage to the industry. And we need to promote more responsibly, educate more, and